What up, gamers? I'm Jason, and today we've got a special episode of Kickstarter Excess or Value. We actually don't have a current project that we're going to be looking at, but we've got an upcoming project that we're going to get a chance to take a look at. So I'm going to let our special guest host introduce himself because I'm sure I'm going to mangle his last name. And I don't want to do it before he actually says it. And he'll let you know where we're going with this video.
Yeah. Hey, guys. My name is Keith Matejka from Thunderworks Games. Known for things like cartographers and role player and talking about all the cool new stuff we got coming.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much for joining us, Keith. And I'm going to let the other regular co-hosts of the show introduce themselves.
Hey, folks. Ryan here from Mr. L's Gaming, and you can find me in the YouTube land where I am now going to be streaming live plays every Tuesday and the new segment coming up next Thursday, which will be Tabletop Talks with Mr. Rao, where I'm just going to ramble about stuff for random stuff, unboxings, new to the collection, crowdfunding. Just take games off the shelf and just show them to you. I don't know what's going to happen. It's just going to be an hour of talking.
Awesome. And we are Rob and
Anna-Marie
from the Meeple Dungeon out here in Kelowna, BC. You can find us on Twitter, YouTube, and our flagship podcast on all your major podcasting sites.
Excellent. Well, Ryan is now going to bring up the Kickstarter for Role Player Adventures, and we're going to have a very awesome interview with Keith. We're going to talk a little bit about the original Role Player, the Role Player Adventures campaign, and what you can be expecting from the upcoming campaign that is launching in November, if I'm not mistaken.
Yep, November 1st.
All right.
Nice round number. I like it.
It's easy to remember for sure.
It's going to be awesome. I cannot wait.
Yeah, I don't. Do you want me to talk about this game a little bit? Is that what you're thinking, or?
Oh, well, we're going to jump into that, but we had a couple questions about the original Role Player
Sure.
that we wanted to ask first. So I was very curious as to what inspired you to create Role Player.
So I had a moment of inspiration, like the lightning bolt. I almost literally popped above my head. But basically, I was an aspiring designer. I worked on a couple projects. I ran a couple one small Kickstarter, and I was kind of trying to figure out what my next project was. I was at a convention called Protospiel. If you're familiar, they're basically like designer get-togethers where we play each other's games and give each other feedback. They're really super fun and useful. And I was playing a friend of mine's game that was like an 18-card role-playing game. Of course, I'm really pretty critical when it comes to looking at games, and I was giving him all this feedback. And at the end of the thing, I was like, I don't like anything about this game except like the character creation part of it. And then it hit me. I was like, what if there was a game that was just all about character creation? And it seemed like such an obvious, cool idea that I was like really surprised nobody else had done this before. So it became like a fire under my butt. We're like. And now I was nervous that somebody might be working on this idea, and the next day I'm sketching out player mats and running to the store and getting as many like different colored dice as I can find and all that stuff. And we just went into playtest mode. I have a background in playing role playing games, both tabletop, but also I'm a big video game guy and like video game RPGs. I worked in video games for many years, and some of that was like. I worked on, part of the team that was working on like character creators for different games, and like Tiger Woods was a big thing where like they had these amazing character creators, or Skyrim and all the stuff. And there's a lot of people that just love spending time in those programs, just like making cool characters, or people who get together with their friends at D&D night and just enjoy the process of making characters. So like, what if there was just a game that just did that? And I thought it was a pretty interesting idea. Like I hadn't seen anything like that before. So off to the races we went. And so I was inspired by another designer who then we're looking at Role Player Adventures right now. And that gentleman's name is James Ryan, who's actually the lead writer of Role Player Adventures. James has been a friend of mine for a long time, and we've worked on many projects together. But he inspired me in that moment, and I can't thank him enough.
Awesome.
Fantastic story. I love the base of that. And then I have not played Role Player. I know that Rob and Anna-Marie are big fans of the game. And I was wondering, was the world of Eulos always in your mind when you created the original Role Player, or was it just the character generator?
So it was just that a character generator, and like the original idea was kind of make it as kind of generic as you can, and I think it came from my experience playing and working on video games, where like a lot of times the hero is very nondescript and it's very kind of from the perspective of the hero, to try to get like people who are playing those games to kind of like fall into those roles and feel like that's them. So the idea behind role players, like, let's make it as generic as possible so that people can kind of weave their own stories about what these characters are. So like as you play role player, you get a random backstory card and a class card and a alignment card, and you're kind of given this set of attributes. And then like a lot of times people like look at the stuff and then they go through this like mental exercise of like trying to connect these things together and have them make sense and talk about their goofy character or whatever. Like the cards are generic in that way so that you can do that. And everything is interchangeable to some degree. I mean, like it was important for me that like, you know, in the game you get weapon cards and armor cards and stuff. And like, I wanted to make sure that like anybody playing with any combination of things can like still buy every card, and there's no limitations as to like the mix and match ability of making a character. So role player started out as super generic as possible. And then over time, you know, people like, you know, really like the game. And then the common comment, I mean, even when I was developing it, the common comment was like, this is cool, but I want to do something with my character. So then as kind of a response to that, we did the next two expansions, which include combat and like some additional like goals and a big monster to fight at the end. But that's not like a real great answer. You know, it's still a character creation game, not a fantasy adventuring game. My thought was like, well, if I'm working at role player, if people want to go on adventures, then like go play Descent and go play Mice and Mystics. And there's a ton of these kind of tactical move around dungeon crawling games. And I wanted role player to be something different than that. But that didn't stop people from wanting to do things with their characters. So my answer to that big question is like, I want to do something with my characters is role player adventures. Is this kind of narrative driven, you know, choose your own adventure style, cooperative adventuring game that you can use any character that you can import from role player with any of its expansions, or use one of the pre-generated characters. And that was a pretty big ask, pretty hard. It was a challenging project for sure, but I'm happy with it for sure in the end. So I've forgotten your original question, but so then as we started to work on all these kind of other games, and as role player came out and I started to work on other games, the thought was like, okay, if I'm going to do another fantasy game, I might as well like put it in the same world. So we end up kind of doing the world building came after the fact of the original game. It's like, oh, people think this is interesting. I get to make more games like this. So then let's start making connections and kind of doing some world building. And some of it was like, I love Easter eggs in video games and stuff. So like I wanted to create as many like little Easter eggs between these games as I could as well. So the analogy that I use is that it's like this world has been like a blank canvas, and like as we need something, then we kind of color in that section. And like as we need like a king for this land, and we need a name for this land, and we need, you know, who are the adversaries, where are the political factions, and we just kind of make them up as we need them. And then I keep a Wikipedia page so that we like don't accidentally contradict ourselves as we go down the road of adding details. So yeah, the world is just a blank canvas that we just keep adding more and more details as we go. And I don't know, it's been a fun project.
I love hearing that so often. It's like, oh, I've always had the idea for this, you know, world in my head. I've always known this, and then everything just magically works. I love hearing that. It's like, no, we just got a page going, and you know, put it together as we go. I like that. It
makes me think of like the creators of Lost. I don't know if you remember that TV show where like they threw all this crazy stuff in, and then they didn't have a plan. And so they're like trying to figure out how to make all these connections and make it make sense, and failed as it went. And I'm just hoping that I don't fail hard like those guys.
Just don't make it be a dream, and you'll be fine.
Yeah, you don't have to worry. You're not just going mystery box, and then being like, no, we open them all, and I have to explain this. Oh no, it's just mystery boxes. Like that was.
Yeah, we don't want that. So, it's been fun to build out the world and add more pieces to it, and it's been a kind of a cool experience, and nothing that I had ever set out to do, or like it wasn't an aspiration of mine either. But it's been fun to see it grow and develop it.
Yeah, no kidding.
No doubt.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it's cool. Sure. So I have a couple questions for you.
Yeah.
Or we have a couple questions for you. The first one I want to start off with is I don't recall getting any royalty checks or asking permission to use my likeness for the dwarf character.
Well, the funny thing is, that's the only time I've done.
Quite close.
It is close, but there is actually 3 of the characters in the role player, the base game, were Kickstarter pledge levels that people paid extra for to get their likeness in, and the dwarf was one of them. So that is actually modeled after someone other than you, even though
is that right? Okay, cool.
The female human and the male elf were the 3 that kind of people paid extra to get their likeness in the game. I think that's the last time I did that, and I probably will never do that ever again.
That's awesome.
People's
hilarious.
like
My
perception of what they think they look like is a lot different than I think reality. But two of the 3 were pretty easy, and the one of them there was a lot of back and forth to try to make sure everybody was happy with the result. So I think in the end I won't do that again. But then on a later project, somebody like accused that like all these illustrations are clearly like real people, and it's like, no, the ones that you highlighted actually were not the real people, and you didn't even identify the ones that were from real people. So it's a fun story, but never again. What's your second question?
That's cool. And we have one more here for you.
So with role player being successful, did you expect to do as well as it went, or was it a surprise?
So, I went into that Kickstarter project thinking it was going to, be gangbusters, like every, wide-eyed creator that like thinks their stuff is the greatest ever. And like the original role player campaign, it raised like $54,000, which like I was kind of disappointed. So this is something people should not do, and I shouldn't tell you this, but like I took some of that Kickstarter money and I pulled it off to the side to start getting artwork done for the expansion that I wanted to do. I printed a very moderate amount of copies. Backers started getting theirs, and like by the time the game had come out, I only had like 300 copies left for retail, and like it was getting really good reviews, and people were like excited about it. But like there was no copies to find. And I mean, I was just like a guy in my basement making games, and like I had no money at all. So I was trying to get a reprint done as fast as I could. And these things obviously take a long time. So I was like super surprised. I was really excited that it was getting really popular. And I think some of the scarcity kind of drove some interest for the game for a while, because it was hard to find. People were like, "Oh, you got a role player? I can't find it. Let's play." So I actually got like a personal loan from like a friend of mine for like $30,000 just to get like some more copies made, so that we can kind of keep and get a little bit more into the supply. And it probably took me over a year to kind of catch up with demand to some degree. And obviously I've kind of built the company on that game. I would still be at my regular 9-to-5 job, and this would still be a hobby if like role player wasn't a thing. So it was kind of a roller coaster of expectations. I got high expectations, was super disappointed. Then it came out. Then I was really excited that there was so much demand, but I was like frustrated because I knew people wanted to play my game, and I couldn't get it into their hands fast. So
yeah,
great.
Wow,
well,
really
that's cool.
Yeah, really cool. So then you progress. So now then you go into making role player adventures, and you launch its campaign, and its campaign is kind of like, it's like pandemic world is starting, right? Kind of like when this thing is like, when this is starting to end and starting and going to be in the fulfill. Tell us a little bit about like the complications that you may have encountered during that time.
Definitely. Yeah. 2020 2021 was tough. Because I mean the big thing is just the shipping crisis. You know, for a while it was people were saying that containers weren't available. The cost of paper was going up. You know, I was hoping to kind of sell this game for $120 maybe, and then by the end I had to end up raising the MSRP all the way up to $150 to even try to make a little bit of money on it. I mean, this project was I mean it's a huge box. It's like 17 pounds. There's a lot of content. And we worked for a really long time, and basically the shipping crisis like ripped any money that we were going to make out of it, you know? So it's like, it was really, I was excited because this is the game I always wanted to make, and it's huge, and we accomplished this great thing and people are loving it. But it's like, at the end of the day, I didn't make a whole lot of money on it. It was definitely not like worth my time, but that's okay. That period of time, and I guess it's still happening to some degree. You know, people are going to Kickstarter backers and saying, "Hey, everything's more expensive. You know, we're either going to hold on to your games in China until costs come down, or we're going to come out and say we really need you to help us pay for the shipping problem." Or I just said, "Hey guys, don't worry about it. We'll take it on the chin. Thunderworks is going to survive. It's not a problem. You know, if you want to help out, then just play our games and share them with your friends." And I mean, that was like, I always see the world from the perspective of a backer, because I was a backer before I was making games. And I mean, that's the thing that I would want my, people that I invested in, that I gave them money for the games to do. So that's kind of what I did. And it was tough, but in 2023 has gotten better in terms of shipping, but now we've got inflation and difficulties with, like, there's definitely people that are more gun shy back in Kickstarter projects, and there's some bad actors that are, kind of blowing out shipping prices at the last minute and shocking people. And that kind of stuff is bad for me, right? It's like those guys are kind of shining shade on the crowdfunding platforms that I like to use, and I want people to feel, like they can trust the creators. And that's not always, when other bad actors show up, and then they kind of damage it for other people that are, I feel like, doing the right thing.
That was a pretty classy move.
I don't know if that answered your question.
Oh no, yeah, it gave us plenty of insight
and a lot of detail, because we do this show. We talk about Kickstarter campaigns, and we have definitely not talked as much about Kickstarter campaigns as we did last year. That goes to show just our own backing habits having changed over the last 12 months. Also, when it comes to bad actors or people doing things that we don't necessarily agree with, you can watch our last episode where we all were discussing a game that I thought was going to be a insta-back for all of us. And all of us were like, yeah, this business practice we don't like. Ciao, see you later.
Right. I mean, and it's harder for publishers because everything's going up as well. Consumers are getting crunched because of inflation as well. Everybody's kind of like being more careful with their money. And like, if somebody's like choosing between buying a board game and like, paying the rent or whatever, like there's an obvious choice, so
buy the board game because they can't throw you out if it's winter in Canada. Woohoo!
Problem solved. I love it. Yeah. But so it's just kind of like the troubles and tribulations of anything. Like change is inevitable. Everything is not always going to be easy all the time. And we just try to do the best you can and keep moving forward and try to make cool games and keep the lights on and, just have a good time.
I was wondering why Kickstarter, with everything going on, all the different platforms, why was Kickstarter well, I get why it was the first one for role player, but when it comes to like adventures and the new campaign, what attracts you to this platform versus GameFound, or now where you've got like Backer Kit and Game on Tabletop?
I mean, it just boils down to that's where the people are. I mean, and I think GameFound is putting forth a good effort to try to build something that they think like creators want to use. And I think they've got some tools there that are interesting. but I'm just not convinced that my audience would go over to a new platform. I can message all my old Kickstarter like project people, like everybody that's backed my previous projects, and like I've got access to that database. There's some technical problems that we've run into, like looking at GameFound. Like, I know it's boring stuff, but it's like the way that they allow, backer data to be exported for importing into the pledge manager that we like to use, and there's some headache stuff there, which is all solvable. And like I think, we were just talking to Alex Radcliffe like 2 days ago, talking to him about like what would try to build incentives for us to move over there. I mean, it's one of the things that's nice that GameFound does is they will invest some additional money into advertising for your campaign, where that's clearly not something Kickstarter does. They will ignore, they just ignore you until there's a problem, which is, it works for now, but I think there's a lot of opportunities for Kickstarter to get better. And I'm hoping that things like GameFound and, BackerKit coming into the market kind of pushes them to be a little bit more innovative and add more features faster and kind of create a better environment for both backers and creators. But there's been baby steps so far, so I don't have a whole lot of faith. That's kind of it. I mean, I've used BackerKit as a pledge manager in the past. I've never, they're kind of new kid on the block when it comes to crowdfunding. And in general, like I've been kind of trying to move away from crowdfunding a little bit because there's a lot of difficulty about being a creator on a Kickstarter project. One piece is in marketing, right? So when you do the Kickstarter project, you're doing all this marketing, spending all this money, getting videos and, content creators, and you're building lots of prototypes to send all over the world. And you're spending a lot of time with, answering backer questions and getting all this information together and whatever. So there's like a huge effort, right? And then when the game comes out 9 months later or whatever, most of the time people don't have a whole lot of money to kind of do a real like, hey, the game's out marketing push. So you have to market it twice. By the time it comes out, I think to the Game Republic, it feels kind of like old news. Like, oh yeah, I read all about that thing 9 months ago. Well, it's out now. You can buy it now. It's like, well, yeah, that's cool. I think is a little bit the response. If you go straight to retail, then you can kind of use all that money to kind of build awareness, and people can say they can buy it right then. But there's a big marketing advantage to being on Kickstarter and getting people invested in big games that people are excited about. So I've been like in the last year, we released 10 Penny Parks and straight to retail. We released Cape May straight to retail. We released the latest map packs for cartographers, packs 4, 5, and 6, straight to retail. So I'm trying to, Thunderworks is growing. I've got a little bit more capital that I can take some more risks. But then there's other games like Role Player Adventures. It's like, I can't take a risk on this game. I mean, it was over $200,000 just to print the first time. And now we've got a whole nother expansion. I don't know how many of these things I would even need. And like, if I overprint and they're sitting in a warehouse for 3 years, sitting on pallets that I'm paying for, like that is way too big a risk for me to do outside of crowdfunding.
I think everyone learned about the risk of pallets thanks to Blacklist Games. When you're talking about bad actors, like, just ask for help earlier. That's all you have to do.
Yeah. I mean, there's one of the biggest challenges for board game publishers figuring out how many of a game to print, because, you can't unprint them. It's interesting because like the economy feels, at least from now, it kind of feels like it's shrinking, a little bit. So the retailers that I talk to are like, yeah, we feel like we're at 2019 numbers in terms of sales. Whereas in 20 and 21, like board game retailers, like assuming they adapted to dealing with the pandemic, like had really good sales because people were buying a lot of games because they're stuck at home, and now they're not, and things are more expensive. So just kind of, it's really challenging because like you print too many and then you're paying $15 a month per pallet to sit in a warehouse over the course of a couple of years. That adds up to a lot of money, and all your profit goes away. or you underprint, and then there's a lot of lost opportunity in terms of getting people games that they want to buy.
Or you can pull the Atari and just bury it in the desert, and someone will find it 20 years later.
Did you see that? Did you see the documentary where they actually went and dug those up?
I did. That was crazy. For those who don't know, that was the big disaster of Atari, was the E.T. board game that just all of a sudden
video game,
disappeared.
Video game.
Was buried, literally buried in the desert.
Right. Yeah, I think it's cool that they actually found it, but yeah, you don't want to be the guy who decide to print E.T. the video game. You don't want to be that guy. Yeah. Cool.
So, Keith, why the decision just to use D6s in the games rather than any other dice?
I mean, like when you play, at least when I played D&D, back when 3rd edition and stuff, like it's all about D6s, right? I mean, and I played a lot of role-playing games. D6s is what we use primarily in Shadowrun and stuff like that. I mean, D6s are great because they like sit flat. You get D8s and they roll over. You get a D20 and they roll around. Like if it's an object that's going to stay there and you don't want it to move, you kind of D6s and I guess D4s, if you want to bring that up, are the most stable dice there are, I would say.
Yep.
So yeah, I mean, they're board game standard. That's when I think of playing role-playing games, those are the dice that I think of. So that's what we went with.
Fair enough. Yeah.
And the faces are nice and big, like in a D8, if you want the faces are smaller, even a D20s, like my eyesight isn't amazing. So I want to be able to read those numbers. And actually, when it came to the dice, there was this decision point where do we want to do like Arabic numerals, like traditional numbers, or use pips? Those are kind of like the two default. And I just found that I can count up pips a lot faster than I can figure if that's a 6 or a 9, or there's no 6. That doesn't make any sense. Or if it's a 2 or a 3, if it's upside down. So people sometimes will ask me did you intentionally use pips on the dice instead of the numbers? And the answer to that was yes as well.
Yeah, cool.
Nice.
Yeah. So the other dice, we've expanded Role Player with additional D6s in the Monsters and Minions box. We've got kind of transparent dice, like frosted dice that go between 3 and 8.
Mm-hmm.
And then in the second expansion, there's D6s, but they're 2 colors. They represent 2 colors. And trying to figure out how to do that was challenging for sure. Because the pips go between 1 and 4, but they represents 2 different colors, which has different advantages in Role Player. But a lot of times when people do dice that are 2 colors, they either get mixed together, so that you got if you a yellow and a whatever, I don't know what the colors that make green all of a sudden, but the colors mix or whatever, and then you're like, what is this? A white and a red, and it kind of turns out pinkish, and then you're like, well, we don't have pink dice in this game. And then if you have them in layers where there's the bottom half is red and the top half is white, then if you happen to be on the die side, that you can't see the other color, so it didn't make any sense. So we did this. I don't know if you've seen it before. We created these dice that have a triangular indentation on the half of it. That we actually painted a different color on. So there's six different dice colors in Role Player, 6 main dice colors. There's a 7th which represents gold. But so then we created 15 dice that has every combination of each one of those 2 of each one of those colors. So every combination is in the game. So that was kind of a fun project in terms of finding new dice and kind of creating a new type of die to meet a specific need.
Cool. Thanks. And very insightful.
Wow. The math geek in me is just nerding out on that.
I was thinking, Ryan, that's a project with your name all over it.
This process of okay, we've got a green and a purple and, green and a blue and a green and a red. They can't all, there's figuring out which one was going to be green plastic with the painted color, and which color was going to go in each one of those 2 spots. And whatever. Those are like little spreadsheets that I have fun making, and then try to apply some kind of logic to what the decisions are. But that's fun. But
Awesome.
Cool.
Okay, so let's talk numbers and pledge levels, because that's what we really, really like to do
Cool.
on this show. And something that we always seem to jump towards is we like to take a look at if there's like an all-in pledge and everything. And I know we were really, really intrigued with this. I'm just going to try to get the scrolling here. That there's this holy Toledo massive, the $400. You just get everything.
Right.
It looks like literally anything you could have role player, you like got it. And 177 people took advantage of this. Talk to me about this pledge level, the thought behind it, and was it complicated to like logistically keep everything? And
so it did get complicated, actually. So, and it's more about logistics than anything. So, obviously at the time we were at those top two things we were making at the factory. So that's kind of like the core product. And then everything else is role play related. So, to get those games over to Europe or to, Australia or something, most of that product is sitting in warehouses in the US. So, I mean, some of it is just like product that's sitting in my warehouse here in Madison, Wisconsin, like some of these promo cards and stuff. That's the only place they exist. So kind of, we reprinted small amounts of these things, which is not the most cost effective. Well, I mean, it was, when you print a small amount of something, the price per unit is usually much higher. But because we had a bunch of stuff that we were reprinting just to kind of get on the boats that were going to the places that everything else was going to, instead of like freighting a bunch of play mats from Madison, Wisconsin to some port onto a boat to go to Happy Shops, which is a place that we fulfill out of Germany, and meet up with the other boat that's coming from China with the role player adventure stuff, and getting that all to be in the same place at the same time. That's like a bit of a, it's a challenge. So we ended up kind of reprinting some of the stuff, even though we didn't really have to. Probably the biggest, there's other things that on previous printings of things, like the Monsters and Minions expansion, the fourth thing there, for some reason, but I knew I was going to do this campaign, and I had reprinted that the previous year, and I was like, hey, let's keep 500 of these in a warehouse in China, so that when we go around and print role player adventures, we can just pull that inventory over, and then it can go into the boat to the destination. So some of those things happened as well. Yeah, because it's like a mix of lots of kind of things that have been released over the last, Role Player came out in 2016. So, I think it came out over 5 years. It was sometimes like getting all those things together at the same place so that they can go to that person's house, and that place is a challenge. So. Yeah. The one that's the toughest is the Role Player Fiends and Familiars expansion big box version. So that was a special version of the Fiends and Familiars Kickstarter second expansion of Role Player. That was actually one of the few times that I've done like a Kickstarter exclusive. In general, I don't do Kickstarter exclusives because I think it creates a bad experience for people down the road. And FOMO is kind of a predatory thing in my mind, so I don't like doing that kind of thing. But people really wanted a bigger box that they could fit all the role player stuff in. And I had this, I worked with this company called Meeple Realty that makes wooden inserts. At the time, people weren't doing foam core yet. Everybody was still doing wood. It was like Broken Token and Meeple Realty were like the two big players. And we did this insert for the base game that fit the base game and the first expansion. Now we're doing a second expansion. And I didn't want to have like people just basically have to throw away, they'd have a second box that didn't work with the insert of the other box. It was complicated. So we built this kind of bigger version of the box that fit the insert that people had previously bought, and then sold them an additional insert that went on top of it to fit all the new stuff in. It was complicated, but I was really trying to like appease people who had bought these wooden inserts in the past. But it turns out that people just bought the big box because they wanted the big box. And they didn't really care about that whole insert shenanigans. But but in the end, like people ask me all the time, like they just want to buy the box. They don't want the Fiends and Familiars expansion that's inside. It's like, well, every single one of those big boxes has the expansion inside. Sorry. But so we had quite a few of those left over, but it made more sense to print more during this campaign to go with Role Player Adventures for the people that ordered it. And now I probably have too many copies of that Fiends big box sitting in my warehouse. Speaking of warehouses and pallets, that was in general, people love Role Player. I mean, I like it too. Don't get me wrong. And people just want more and more stuff. And, I aim to make the people happy. So I continue to buy stuff. But the thing is, when Role Player Adventures moved forward, I felt like that's my cutting point. Like Role Player has kind of gotten as big as it is. I mean, you could argue that it's a little bloated in terms of content, but people just want more stuff all the time. But I've kind of decided like I'm kind of done working on Role Player stuff. Moving forward, we're going to focus on adventures and other Role Player related games. We'll see what happens in the future. So.
Excellent. I think this is a great transition point to start talking about the new campaign. We really started with, a nice background on the game because, as I mentioned earlier, I've not played Role Player, and I was very fascinated about this campaign because this is definitely the type of game that has me incredibly intrigued, and I really want to start talking some more about. Hopefully, I'm pronouncing this right. We've got Gulpax's Secret coming.
Yeah. So Gulpax's Secret is the next expansion for Role Player Adventures. Launches on Kickstarter November 1st. So it's another 1 to 4 player cooperative campaign. So the base game was 12 adventures, and then the new one is 7 adventures. So it's a smaller box, it's a smaller experience, it's a smaller price point. But the new one takes place on a timeline that's closer to Cartographers. So Cartographers is another game in the Role Player universe that's about making maps that on my official timeline that nobody knows but me. It's 2,000 years in the past. So Cartographers is 2,000 years before Role Player Adventures, and now we're going to do a campaign in that period. So when I talk about Easter eggs and stuff, we're going to have, like, if you've ever played Cartographers, you're going to find out who this guy is on the cover of the Cartographers box because he's going to appear in the new Kickstarter or in the new campaign for Role Player Adventures. So
cool.
And there's all kinds of stuff like that, and I'm really excited about it. And there actually is. I don't want to spoil too. Like that's the tough thing about talking about these story games is because I really love when people discover this stuff, and I don't want to give away too much stuff because people don't like spoilers, and it's more fun that way. So it's a 1 to 4 player cooperative storytelling game. So these games are all about making choices. And the game remembering the choices you make. You're going to run into characters and you're going to react to them in certain ways, either in decisions you make, or maybe you lose to them in combat or something. But you're going to run into them like 3 adventures down the road, and they're going to remember what you did, and they're going to react accordingly. So it has that feeling. These games have this feeling of it's a living world in terms of, and your characters are making differences. Because those kind of things are always promised, right? Especially coming originally from a world of video games, where like people talk about these video games where like your choices matter and you go down these paths, but you play them and then they just basically like they're like non-choices. They're like they end back on the path that that they wanted you on, and it doesn't really feel like it makes a big impact. But in these games, they definitely do make an impact. I mean, that's one of the reasons why the storybooks in these games are 50, 60 pages long, because we have all these branches that one player isn't going to see all of them for sure when they play through.
And if the game doesn't deliver on that, you get an ending like Mass Effect 3 where it's like choices, railroad right at the end.
Right. Yeah.
Really?
That's the railroad. Yeah, we definitely want to make people feel like they're making choices, and I don't know. I'm biased, but I think the writing in these games are amazing. So, so the next one is 7 adventures long. Takes place 2,000 years in the past. Cartographers. They're going to have heroes from then. There's actually a couple characters that kind of branch the 2,000 year span, and and you have to find out how that happens and why. But
That's fun.
yeah, so that's it. There's more. So there's 3 kind of decks in the game that are kind of like hidden information. There's called a discovery deck that like spits out items that you can use. Sometimes it spits out like pieces that you put on the map that you discover as you play around, because each adventure has its own kind of adventure map, and you move like a party marker around showing kind of where you are in the world. And sometimes like cards come out, and if you've ever played like there's a couple other games where like the card adds locations to the map as you discover them, so it has a sense of discovery. There's another deck of titles. So one of the main, there's maybe 3 ways that the game remembers what you've done. One is titles. It's a card. It's kind of like, speaking of Lost, kind of like a previously on Lost card. It's like, you've made this decision. It's important. It's going to sit on your party journal for the rest of the game. And then 3 adventures down the road, it's going to be like, do you have this title card that says you killed this guy? And then it reminds you why you got this card, if it's been a few weeks since you played. And then, so there's more of those in the new game, obviously. And then there's rare cards are the other kind of cards that like just the game spits out different, prizes. You get a new sword or a new weapon or whatever. The focus on this particular adventure has been there's 3 different factions in the base game that you're kind of going up and down based on your choices. There's the King's Guard, there's the Dragul, and then the Starlit Door, which is like this cult, and like your choices, and they're like going up and down. And then you get like different effects based on where that is at any given moment. So the new adventure, the first adventure was kind of focused more on the different factions that are fighting. And this one is more about characters. It's more like there are still 3 factions. They're different this time around. But it's really this adventure, we really focused on characters because we find that's what people attach themselves to. Like in the first adventure, if there was a character they really liked, but they were on a different faction than you were on. They were on a different team. And then you were kind of fighting each other. Like people didn't like that. They're like, that's my buddy. I don't want to have to fight him. Well, he joined the wrong team. I can't help you, So this time around, it's much more kind of less about the kind of the groupings of factions. And now it's all about like your relationship with different characters. And there's some cool surprise endings at the end that I'm excited for people to run into.
Cool.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Maybe to expand a little bit more there on that, what can we expect to see in as far as components, mechanics go with this new expansion?
Yeah, so there's just as a note on the Kickstarter, we'll offer the base game, the first expansion, which came out at the same time as the base game, a reprint, and then the new expansion. So there'll be kind of 3 boxes. The new stuff, there's a lot more stuff of the existing stuff, which is what's going deeper there, but there's some new mechanics as well. In addition to your character having, a class and alignment and stats and stuff, and in the base game, you have a special class ability. If you're the druid, you have a special druid ability. Now we have kind of a secondary class, which is called a profession. So each person will pick one of 8 different professions at the beginning of the campaign. And then there's special call outs all over the place. It's like, is anybody in your party the minor profession? And you're like, oh yeah, Jimmy is. And then you go to the special entry, and then they've got their own kind of quest that's happening that's integrated into the core story. And then it also has things like mechanical pieces where it's like, you're fighting in a cave, and if the minor character gives the party an extra bonus because there happens to be a minor in the party. So it creates more variety. It gives people kind of their own little mini quest. Each person's profession has their own special ability. So you also have your class ability. Now you have your own kind of ongoing power that's specific to your profession. And then at some point in the middle of the campaign, this is more than I've actually revealed about this game, so you get the scoop. At some point during the campaign, your story is going to fork, and your special ability is going to either get changed to the advanced version 1 or the advanced version 2 of it based on the choices that you've made according to your profession. Mm-hmm. So we're pretty excited about that. there's all new pre-generated characters. We've got all kinds of, I mean, there's like well over 200 cards just in the expansion. So we sacrifice some trees in the name of fun on this game for sure. So yeah, that's
awesome.
That's the fun part. And I'm trying to think of if there's anything else like components wise. Obviously, every story has its own storybook. Every map has its own, or every adventure has its own map. So since there's 7 adventures and we put the maps back to back on each other, so there's 4 pieces of paper, and so you'll find out what's on the back side of the last one when you get it. So
cool.
Some secrets to reveal there. But yeah, cool. It's primarily, the base game. I don't know what the final word count is, but Role Player Adventures had over 400,000 words in it, and the Role Player Adventures, the new expansion is not that far off from that. So there's some fun stuff coming.
Wicked,
exciting,
love it,
cool. Yeah. So and then that'll close out the year. Like, I'd be curious as like what I decide to do with Role Player Adventures next. We want to do more campaigns down the road. One thing that that I don't know if a lot of people know about, that I released, or the team, I released it, but I had help with my writers. We released like a pretty extensive document that kind of tells people, and it's available on my website. I forget how many pages it is, but it's pretty long. And but it basically tells people how to make their own adventures using the components they have. So there's been a couple of people in the community that started to do that, and that's pretty exciting. I've got one of my friend's sons is making like a trilogy of games and kind of reusing some of the maps or making some of their own, kind of reusing some of the items. And some of those people have reached out to us to get feedback on the stuff that they're working on. So I would love to see the Role Player Adventure system kind of become a thing that people can build their own content with. And
what a neat idea. That's fun.
I mean, fantastic. I always go back to my world, my mind in the world of video games, because back in the day, if you Half-Life came out, was this big deal, but then the modders created Counter-Strike, and that took it through the roof, and then all these other people were creating mods based on, like, it's kind of like a video game modding idea, but in a cardboard setting. So yeah, I think the Lucky Duck guys are doing that for Destinies as well. They're encouraging people to build content for those games.
Cool.
But we're trying to do the same.
Very cool. Love it.
Thanks.
So, Ryan, why don't you go ahead and take the next question?
So there's going to be, you have a nice following of players that are playing role player right now, playing Role Player Adventures, tooting its horn, how great it is. So we're banking, obviously, that we're going to get a whole bunch of new players coming into this one. What should be the good jumping in point for those new players? And what are you going to do to get those new players into this system with this campaign?
Yeah, so that's one of the things I think some people don't realize is that, like, Role Player and all these other games that are in the world, Role Player and Lockup and Cartographer's Heroes, these are all standalone games. Like, you don't have to know any of these other games exist. And Role Player Adventures is the same. You don't have to have played Role Player before. I mean, Role Player is a competitive game, and this is a cooperative game. And I've got like, I don't know what the numbers are. I think 36 pre-generated characters. So you can have like no idea what Role Player is and just pick up Role Player Adventures and play it. So that's one of the things I like, creating things that are dependent on other games, like traditional expansions. I mean, I think they kind of, there's a lost opportunity for people who kind of don't know where to jump in. I always say, if you love, every game has kind of its own unique mechanics, so if you like drawing and like a lighter, 45-minute experience, go play Cartographers. If you like manipulating dice, go play Role Player. If you like blind bidding and like kind of playing the bad guy, go play Lockup. And if you like economic games, go play Dawn of Ulos. Like, all these games are kind of separate, and they don't have to be in the same universe, and they're not mechanically connected except for the Role Player to Role Player Adventures piece. And to me, it's just like, it creates an identity of those types of games. People say, oh, Role Player, I heard that's really good. Here's another game in the universe. In general, I hear these are really good games. We should play more of them. I guess like Shem Phillips does that same kind of thing for Garfield games with his architects and paladins and those kind of games.
Mm-hmm.
So how do I bring people in? I don't know.
You just make good games.
Right. I mean, that's kind of, for me, the secret sauce. Like, I just make games that I really, really like. And then I feel like I've been lucky that other people seem to have the same taste as I do and like the same things that I like. It sounds silly, but that's kind of how it worked out. There's no scientific equation that I've got going on over here. I just got lucky. So.
One of the big things on the show that we like to do, and we like to buy the excessive items. We love to bling out our games. We always like to figure out like what is the excess. So since we've got you here, the designer of the game, what do you think you're going to have in this campaign that you love, but it's probably a little excessive and some people might shy away from? Is it a playmat? Is it like what's that bling that's going to get some?
Well, I feel bad for you a little bit because I think the days of excessive bling are kind of starting to go away. Because of all this, the shipping stuff, the kind of the economy, like these really big expensive games, I think we're going to see less and less of them because they are becoming more and more risky. I mean, look at the stuff that came out this week. Whatever the latest CMON title is that
the Dune,
the new Dune game.
Yeah,
it's crazy expensive. It looks amazing, and the shipping is insane. And there's a lot of like people talking negative about it. I mean, at the end of the day, they'll sell they'll sell enough copies to make money. I'm not doubting it, but I don't know. Like, I think the number of these like really big games are going to go down. And I don't know. Like, I create some bling stuff, but I'm not like a super bling publisher. So I've got my metal coins for Role Player. You can use them in Role Player Adventures. So now I get to sell them to two different types of customers. We've done like these little like dice towers that people wanted, or we do play mats from time to time. But I'm not really like a huge believer in super bling out. You look at the games like Merchants of the Dark Road. I'm sure you guys are familiar with this game with like, It has like magnets in the board. So when you turn this thing, it goes to those certain things. Like, that's cool, but that was really expensive to make. And I would rather pay $15 less per game than, I don't know what the number is, but I don't feel like I need that. My solution to that was, if you look at 10 Penny Parks, I have a disc that moves and I just have a hole in the board. And I think it works just as well.
I love 10 Penny Parks.
Yeah, full disclosure, we're big 10 Penny Parks here as well.
Yeah. So in terms of bling, that game, I was like, I want really thick cardboard, because I want this to feel like a premium product. So it's 3mm thick cardboard. Not that many games have cardboard that thick. And I wanted to create that carousel in the middle of the board because I thought it's kind of a cool showpiece and it gives a table presence. It makes it feel unique. Like, I'm trying to think like if a blinged out version of that would be like, I'm sure somebody has done this. Somebody should go like search Etsy or Thingiverse, but that's somebody like make some awesome plastic 3D printed, like multicolored, amazing looking thing. But I don't think the number of customers that want that stuff make it like worth making.
Yeah.
On the other hand,
you said, they might go on Etsy
and Death May Die. I'm sure. Jason, tell me you have the big Cthulhu statue. Tell me you have it.
I do have the big Cthulhu statue.
I knew it.
You have it. And how many of us got Galactus here?
I think all of us.
You guys are like that super elitist, like not elitist, but like the group of people that love that kind of stuff.
But the funny thing is, we were talking about just how our buying practices have changed in the last 12 months. Right. We were all looking at, and not to talk about like another game, but this is the best example I can have, is like we were talking about Agamonia, and we looked at the miniatures versus the standees, and those miniatures for the bad guys were just not good enough. And we're the miniatures guys. Like, we're the people that are going to buy those $50 miniature packs. None of us bought them. We're just like, forget it. We'll deal with standees. It's like the heroes look great. Standees look great. These miniatures are no good. I think from that moment on, we've been really like sort of like piecing together the few things. So we usually find that like one bling thing that it's like, you know what, this is the awesome bling, whether it's like the playmat or those great coins, or maybe you've got amazing card sleeves that are just going to like elevate the game presence like just a little bit. That's the kind of thing that we like to get now instead of getting all of it.
tell me what an amazing card sleeve looks like. That's what I thought that was a funny. Like, I think of these. There are probably cool, like affordable, like smaller price point things to make for people, right? We're for the Dawn of Ulos campaign, which is going on right now, but probably when this goes live, maybe it won't be going on anymore. But we're doing like metal coins for that, and I think they look really cool.
Brotherwise Games has amazing card sleeves for Call to Adventure, like with the different colored backs. They're thick. Like it works really well for them, and they've been promoting them because they had some issues with the printing, so some of the expansions don't match. But if you got the sleeve, you got the printed back, so you can everything just fits. So that's a really solid, like nice premium product. I think communicating how cool they are across the internet to a customer, I think is hard. But I think there are cool sleeves. Like I think there was a vampire game that had sleeves that was like partially opaque and partially transparent. It had like a blood splatter across it. And like that was cool. Like it wasn't just a clear sleeve, but it didn't like go over a bunch of artwork that I like. So there are cool sleeves, don't get me wrong. That's just a thing that I've never gone down the custom sleeves thing. But maybe I should. All these things take time, I think. I think it depends on really what it's for and how it comes out. Like I avoided the custom sleeves originally on Call to Adventure, and when my friends got them, and then I saw the sleeves, and I was like, wow, I really should have got those. So next time when they went back to reprint, I was like, I'm re-sleeving my whole game.
Yeah, I mean, like I think what's that game? Dune Imperium is a good example of like they released their own little upgrade pack that sells on their website that replaces different pieces to be more blinged out. And like I would love to get a copy of that blinged out thing for Dune Imperium. So like I'm totally a hypocrite, right? So sometimes I really want those things and sometimes I don't.
I think that's everybody, right? Like some games you're just like, oh, this would look really good with that. And other games, it's like, I don't need that. I think this game is just great the way it is. And all that stuff in this particular game for me would just be fluff, Like
that's been happening more and more where we've been avoiding some of those specific products. It's harder to find the bling that really adds to the game, that adds to the table presence where it's like, I spent that $20 and you know what? It's cool. It looks better. But sometimes, as you pointed out, Keith, like you can spend a ton of money and it's like, well, that was a letdown. And, I sang the praises of Call to Adventure, but I did get like the premium version of the Stormlight Archive, like when I had to get it from the US, and that cost me a pretty penny. And they downgraded the quality of a lot of the other components in there. And I was like, wow, that was the worst purchase I've made. And then to top it off, like, just to like add a little bit of salt in the wound, then I see it at a local Canadian game store for $40. And I'm like, oh, geez, you really got me good now.
I mean, sometimes those like blinged out components like actually are negative to gameplay sometimes. Like, I mean, I don't want to name games because like that's just bad form, but like sometimes you get like some crazy markers like, well, now I can't read the board as well versus like having the cube that was there before. So like that happens to you sometimes, or trying to, and from like I talked about overprinting and knowing how much to print of stuff. Like same goes for these specialty components. Like, okay, how many coin sets do we need? Like, how many people are going to buy these? Or am I going to just sit on them for 5 years and just have my money tied up when I could be making other games with them? So, yeah, there's always, I mean, part of running a business is your risk assessment. Like you're always trying to figure out like, where do I want to take risks? Sometimes, different people have different tolerances for risk. And mine is pretty healthy, but you gotta take a look at it and think about it to figure out if you want to do this thing that could be amazing, but it also could just cost you a lot of money. So, unfortunately, game publishing is a business. It's like any kind of art form. I mean, I consider board games like some form of art. Both design and visual.
But it's business, and making money should not be a dirty word, and profit should not be a dirty word. Although you look at some backers, it's like, you made money. It's like, well, do you want another game or not?
Yeah.
I don't want to work for free in general. Like So that's the thing. I mean, there is a kind of this like emphasis on like garage band style, one man toughing it out, working 15 hours a day for years on end to bring their dream alive. There's something kind of like romantic about that for some reason, but like and I felt like that for a long time when I used to work like crazy hours because I had my 9-to-5 job, and then I would work from 7 p.m. to 2 a.m. like every single day working on Thunderworks stuff. But man, that gets, after a few years, you start burning out.
No kidding.
Burning the wick at both ends. It doesn't end well for anybody. No. I think, especially in the last few years, the awareness of mental health and kind of work-life balance is more and more in the spotlight. And I think, we see more and more of the effects of those things going poorly. So, I don't know. Yeah. It's like the backer perspective is always very interesting. It's not always very loud, but I understand it. I mean, I'm a backer too. So
I think ours is fairly simple. Don't lie to us, be honest. And if you're in trouble, ask for help early and we're good.
Yeah. I mean, most backers are great. And I think like just being transparent and just giving regular updates and being communicative, that solves most of the problems. But, there's always bad actors that kind of can poison the well a little bit. And I think as human beings, we tend to focus on the negative, right? So if I get 10 compliments and then I get one guy who's like being a jerk and telling me that, something bad, like that's the only thing I can focus on, and I think that's kind of just common in human nature. But it's good to be aware of it and try to focus on the good,
It's all about delivery. Unfortunately, some of those people that actually have a point just can't deliver it well, so their point gets lost as just basic noise. It's like, man, just be decent to people and stuff will go your way.
And some people just like being mean, that's what they like. It's like, okay.
And unfortunately, we've got a whole internet culture of people just being really mean, and it's cool. And I could name so many YouTube channels that I just look at and I'm like, why hasn't YouTube gotten rid of this trash? But not talking about the board game space, by the way.
Right.
I do have I love movie, film, podcast, stuff like that. And there's a whole sect out there that I just don't know why they're on the internet still, but that's another point.
Yeah, the video game community is known for being crazy toxic, right? So that's another world that I try not to enter because it gets crazy.
I'm laughing because it's so true, and it's so true. Talking off camera about MMORPGs, about toxic people, so I can emphasize. So we're getting to the end of this year. I know that I've got 2 more questions that I'd like to ask, but I think there's a chance that out of our list that we wanted to go over with you, that Ryan or Anna Marie and Rob will ask them. So I'll let them go first, pick one last question, and then we'll wrap this up.
Do you have something in mind there, Ryan?
I know one thing, because I know that Thunderworks is you're based out of Wisconsin, and I'm a huge Green Bay Packers fan and everything like that. Is there any possibility of working with the Packers and bringing like an Aaron Rodgers promo card into the game?
I mean, I guess anything's possible. But so I'm in Wisconsin. Wisconsin is known for a lot of different things, but one, everybody in the state loves the Green Bay Packers, and if when they get sick of watching them, then they watch the Wisconsin Badgers. But I'm not a huge sports fan, so I don't know if that's something that I would chase. Although there's one sports board game that I like. I don't know if you've ever played First and Goal. I think is actually a pretty fun football board game. Lots of dice in that one. But yes. I don't think Aaron Rodgers is that interested in working with Thunderworks, but I can keep my ear to the ground and see if I hear anything.
Oh, right.
Cool.
All right. I had a question here. Do you know roughly what value this Kickstarter will have over retail?
So my traditional thought is that whatever I think the MSRP is going to be, like Role Player Adventures, I thought the MSRP was going to be lower. So people got this game for $100 when the retail ended up being $150. So they ended up getting 33% off in the end. I didn't plan that, but I wasn't going to go back and ask for more money. So usually I give it like a 20 to 25% discount. And then we do some, we subsidize some of the shipping as well, so it doesn't feel so painful. And that's kind of what I do. When it comes to Kickstarters, people do either a price reduction, which was more common before. Now people are kind of tending to charge closer to MSRP, but then they do some FOMO items where you get these extra miniatures or this expansion is included or that kind of stuff. I don't like doing the FOMO stuff, so I end up doing the discount. And
I appreciate that.
there's always like a certain number of people that are like, I'll just get it in retail. And I'm kind of like, that's cool. Like, that's great. Like, my products do really well in retail, and you're more patient than I would be. So I'm happy to see that happen. But I mean, sometimes that backfires because Role Player Adventures, we set how many we're going to print after the Kickstarter is over. And then we continue to get pre-orders in our pledge manager, like well after we kind of decided because we had to move forward. So then when the product finally came in and all the Kickstarter backers got their stuff, there wasn't enough copies of the base game left over to justify shipping it overseas to other retailers in Europe or anywhere. So Role Player Adventures was only in retail in the US, and it sold out with at least out of distribution within a week. And then for the expansion, there wasn't enough copies left over after the Kickstarter backers to even justify going into retail in the US. I think we had like I want to say there was like less than 1,000 units left or something. Mm-hmm. So my guy who sells into distribution is like, it's not even worth throwing it in distribution. We just don't have, all we're going to get is a bunch of orders and they all get allocated and won't get the stuff that they asked for. And so let's just not bother putting it into retail. So I just sold them on my website and my and on conventions and stuff. And I think I have 30 copies of the expansion left. And so what I'm saying is that some people, it's fine for them to say, well, I'll just buy it at retail. That's cool. But just know that there is a chance that the game might not make it there. But I mean, that's not my intention. I don't want to like starve the market of copies or anything. But, sometimes that's just the way it goes.
It's like you said, you have to, decide how many you're going to make, and you can't make too many, or they sit in a warehouse, right? You got them on pallets.
That's a little bit what happened to me, because we did get it up in Canada, and I was actually talking to my local game store who does have a nice credit program, but I've been buying online more during the pandemic. So I was like, hey guys, you forgot to give me credit. I was trying to work this out with them, and then I was like, oh, the last copy's gone. And I was like, son of a, all right, it'll be back. I know it.
Yeah, sometimes I get that, like, hey, when's Nephros' Judgment coming back into print? And I have to be like, well, probably September of 2023. And they're like, what? These things take a long time, unfortunately. And I'm not, we have to plan or do lots of planning. So,
yeah. I want to jump into I think you mentioned something that at least I'm always interested in, and I know Jason sometimes is interested in this, is the $1 just get access to the pledge manager thing. I love to hear your thoughts about just, having that one little pledge level, market what it is. Some people are now doing $10 get access to the pledge manager. I want to hear your thoughts about maybe those types of levels, because I know you mentioned about like people coming into the pledge manager and then buying your product. They didn't back into the campaign.
So I mean, it has pros and cons like anything. Having people pledge with their dollars on Kickstarter creates this inflated number that like it encourages other people to back the project. So that's kind of nice. And you can do these market things like, we hit $1 million on Kickstarter. That's cool. But if all those people just pledged $1 and then they went to the pledge manager and then bought their stuff there instead, I would actually make more money then. Because the percentage that Kickstarter takes from those transactions, is around 5%, whereas it's less on the pledge manager on the other side. So if people are interested in my games, I don't care how they get it, whether it be on Kickstarter or on the Pledge Manager or just buy it at retail. Like, I just want to make it available to people and then give an offering, and people are into it. They're into it. The thing that's nice about the Pledge Manager is that I can offer other products. It's like if you go into the Role Player Adventures Gulpax's Secret expansion Pledge Manager, you'll probably be able to pick up a copy of Role Player 2, and then people are kind of on the Pledge Manager in kind of buying mentality. It's just like you got the Snickers by the counter when you're, or the little kind of things at the cash register at the store. It's like, oh, that's cool. I'll pick that up too. That happens a lot, which is nice on the Pledge Manager. But if like everybody on the whole campaign pledges $1 on Kickstarter, it's not going to hit the funding goal. So it's just not going to happen. So that would be a disaster as well. I get that like people want, they want to control their finances a little bit. They're like, well, I'm going to pledge $1 now. I'm going to see what the value proposition that's being offered is and see what it looks like at the end of the campaign. And then when the Pledge Manager comes up, I'm going to confirm that the shipping rates are what they said they were going to be. And then I can delay letting go of my money for a couple months. Like there's a lot of advantages to waiting for the Pledge Manager. But if everybody pledged $1, none of these Kickstarter projects would even happen. So,
right.
Fine balance.
Yeah. But I mean, I'm going to create as many ways possible for people to give me their money. So if they want to give it to me on Kickstarter, cool. They want to give it to me Pledge Manager, cool. If they want to buy it on my web store 6 months later, cool. Do
you have an Amazon wish list that I can link at the bottom there for anyone that just wants to send you gifts?
No. I don't need any gifts. But yeah. Cool.
All right. So
that's awesome.
The last two questions, and then we will wrap this up. So we talked a little bit about some of the new mechanics coming in Gulpax's Secret. So what new mechanic are you most proud of creating? If you can reveal it now. If you can't, be spoiled.
Like in that specific game?
Yeah, and that's in the new specific expansion. What's the new mechanic that's got you really excited?
Well, I would say, I have a good team. And the developer on this one, John Brigger, did a great job. Him and I we worked together to come up with some interesting things. So in Role Player Adventures, if you're not familiar, you basically have a card or a book that says, hey, you need a green 3, a white 2, and a purple 4 or whatever dice. And like as a team, everybody's playing cards from their personalized decks to manipulate those dice to get them to match. We did some really, I don't know if you played Role Player Adventures, but everybody has like a tarot-sized card that has the monster picture on it and the dice that you're trying to hit. There's a couple of times in the campaign where you fight like a really important character. You fight a god at least one time, and you have to you actually take out 4 of these cards and you put them together in a puzzle, and it's a really cool moment when that happens. I hate spoiling it a little bit, but it is a part that I think is really cool. And like the original idea was John, but I think it added some really interesting, cool moments to the game. We definitely made an effort to sometimes Role Player Adventures, there's moments where it's like, oh, fighting this guy is kind of really similar to fighting this guy, and it's like not enough variety. This time we made a bunch of these kind of a lot more unique moments as you play through the adventure.
Awesome.
And then the last question, the one thing that I like to end a lot of interviews with, because I think it's always fun. So imagine, go back to when you started with Role Player and you're trying to get this going, give us for, us and then all the new people out there, the best elevator pitch for the game. Why do we need to back this? Why do we need to support you? Why do we need to give you our money and make sure that this comes together?
Do you want to pitch for Gulpax's Secret, or you want to pitch for?
Gulpax's Secret.
Okay. I feel like I need music and so yeah. If you want to play the most well written, immersive storytelling board game in the universe, you need to play Gulpax's Secret
Nice.
Love it.
I love it.
I'm hooked.
Excellent. So,
Universe, here I come.
Awesome.
Ryan, go ahead and you can shut down the screen share, and we're going to have everyone just remind you once again where you can find them. And just want to say a big thanks to Keith for coming on and spending some time with us this evening. It's a lot of fun.
Very cool.
We'll be working on getting this video released in the next couple of weeks.
Awesome.
All right, so who wants to take it away?
Sure. Ryan, Mr. Owl's Gaming. And you can find me in YouTube land, where I'll be going live every Tuesday and Thursdays. And you can also check me out on all my gaming adventures on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, at Mr. Owl Gaming.
And we've been Rob and
Anna Marie
from the Meeple Dungeon out here in Kelowna, BC. You can find us on Twitter, YouTube, and our flagship podcast, the Meeple Dungeon podcast, on all the major podcasting sites.
And our special guest, remind everyone where they can buy your stuff, give you money, find that Amazon wish list. I want to see it up there in the next couple of days.
Yeah, so thanks for having me, you guys. I'm Keith Matejka from Thunderworks Games out of Madison, Wisconsin, USA. And you can find me easily at www.thunderworksgames.com, but I'm also on Twitter and Facebook and Instagram and all these things. I'm easy to find and pretty responsive as well. But and in terms of where you can catch me in person, I will be at Gamehole Con in Madison, Wisconsin near the end of October. I will be at PAX Unplugged in early December, and that kind of finishes out the year. I'm always at Origins and Gen Con, and we're going to see if we can make it to Essen next year. That's the goal. We'll see if it happens.
Nice.
Awesome. And everyone, you guys know who I am, so just want to thank you all for watching, and I'd like to remind everyone to like, comment, subscribe, hit the notification bell so that YouTube will let you know when our next video is released. Also, down below in the video description, you'll find links to all of Dice and Dragon's social media feeds, as well as all the feeds of everyone that was here today. So I'll have those links for you, so you will make it very easy for you to find them. And then also down there is a link to multizone.ca, a great Canadian game store. So if you're looking for anything to do with role player adventures, maybe they still have some copies. They actually do back Kickstarter games. So make sure you click that link. You'll get 10% off your next purchase. And it's a great way to support the channel. A portion of that purchase is returned to us. And then popping up now on the screen are going to be links to some previously released videos. So you have the link to the Kickstarter Excess or Value playlist. And then it's going to be our most recent video, but once we get something played with a role player, because I'm fairly certain now that I'm going to be playing either the competitive game or adventures, we'll make sure that we update that accordingly. And with that being said, we're going to do our tagline. I think he's going to be lagging behind here because I forgot to tell him what it is. So we remind everyone to keep playing games.
Keep playing games, everybody.